So we're going to look at a couple of methods for setting up a system for your grid to help you with your system art projects or exercises that we've set. The simplest way to set a grid up is to go into your guides and grid in here, and I've already set this up whereby I'm creating a grid line at 50 pixels, okay, with a subdivision of 1, okay? Yeah, and I'll show you what that looks like on screen by going to View and Show Grid. Okay, so you can now see that my grid is across the page. I'm also going to snap to grid because this is now going to allow me to draw a square, and we've asked you to think about it a 6 by 6 as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oops, there we go. So now I have my 6 by 6 grid ready for working with and ready to start implementing my data. So I can now count across 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 across the way and 6 down the way. Then I can go and start filling. I'm going to create a color. I'm going to turn off the stroke around the edge. I'm going to close the color palette for now. We don't need that open. And then I can start, if I was to create a 2 by 2 square, a 1 by 3 square, or maybe a 3 by 3 square, etc., etc. So that's one way we could work with Illustrator to set up a grid and to set up and create your system, Illustrator system drawings that we've asked you to do. I'm going to show you another very useful method now that I'm going to first of all close. Sorry, I'm going to view, take off the snap to grid and hide the grid, and I'm just going to get rid of these and these and these, and I'll leave this square here because it's a really useful tool in Illustrator for splitting this into a grid that has all sorts of uses, but we'll first of all show you how you can use it for the tasks that we've set here, and then I'll show you how you can set up columns and guides for a page layout as we were doing in Photoshop. So I'm going to go down to Path and Split to Grid, and all I want to do is have it 6 by 6, and now that's immediately going to split that into my grid, yeah, which is great. Now then, you'll see here what I've got now are individual squares. So let's just go and group those, object group. That's fine. I can move them around. I've got my grid. I can draw a number of grids now. If I wanted to, I could increase them, change the size of them. You know, if I wanted a smaller grid, I'm just going to be careful to keep the aspect ratio the same. If you hit the Shift key and do that, that will force it into being squares. So I can change the size of them. Yeah, if I wanted to lock them on the page and copy and paste them quite easily. If I copy that, paste that, got myself a second grid. I'll delete that. And I'll just show you how that works with your layers. Again, just to remind you, if I open up the layers, you'll see I've got each individual square on the layer. But what I'm going to do with this now is, because I just want it there as a guide, I'm going to, first of all, create a second layer, and now I can lock that layer. So now that's just a guide in the background, yeah? And now I can work on top of that without any problem. And let's just quickly revisit that idea of the X and Y. Let's just draw you an illustration of how that works using Illustrator. So let's start by using the text tool. And in here, we'll put in X, and we'll make that X a little bit bigger. I'm not going to go into great detail about the about using text just now. We'll be doing more of that later, but I've got type up here with font and font sizes. But I've also got, more importantly, we've also got the type panel, and I can get character up here, and up here I can now start to enlarge. Yeah, so I'll just bring that up to 36, and let's just move that into position above there, X. And then I'm going to go and get the line tool, and I'm going to hit the shift key and just draw it so it stops it going at a funny angle across like that. That's what I didn't want to happen. So I'm going to do that and do that again. Let go too early. Okay. And you'll see that at the moment that line is invisible, so I need to go and make sure it's got a fill in there. Okay. And then I can also go and pop an arrowhead on the end of that. Okay, so that illustrates that nicely. So there's my X direction across the page. And then I could do the same. Let's just copy this over to here. Let's put that there. Choose that. Change that to Y. Okay. And then I'll repeat that. This time I'll go down the way using the line tool. You see over here that now needs the black in there. You notice there's all sorts of different ways of selecting color. I don't tend to use this palette so often. I prefer the one that's like the Photoshop one. And then I'll add the arrow on the bottom of that. Okay. So now, oops. That now demonstrates the Y going down the way, X going that way. So if you threw your dice, your first position, you threw a 1, let's say you threw a 2. Let's just quickly draw a square and show how that might work. So let's say you had a rectangle and it was filled with a color, and it didn't have a stroke, and it was this size, okay? And you then want to establish a position, so you throw the dice and you throw a 1, so that goes into 1 for the X, and you throw a 4 for the Y. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's the position of the shape in the system. Okay, so that's shown us how to use and draw a simple grid and looking at the X and Y. Just before I finish, I want to revisit that split to grid to show you how you can use it for page layout. You know, where we showed you how to do it in Photoshop, to lay out your pages and lay out your images, you can do exactly the same way in Illustrator. I'll just delete that little lot, and this is locked, that's why I can't delete that. Let's go and unlock that and delete that. So this time I'm going to go and draw a square, and I'm going to draw it across most of the page. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my object, path, split to grid. And this time I'm going to make sure I add them as guides. And I'm going to go rows. I'm going to have 3 rows down the way and 4 columns across the way. And I'm going to make sure that I've got, I don't know, let's put the gutters in this time, because this is a layout grid that I'm building. And press OK. And now you can see that I've created a simple layout grid, and I would leave that locked on the background for putting my images in. Yeah. Okay. And then I could place my images in there, and I could get rid of the layer at the end. And what I can do is I can actually import images into Illustrator. Give me a second. Make sure I'm on a new layer before we do that. That's what was going on there. Let's click up onto this layer. There we go. Because I was on a locked layer, the place was locked out. So place, and then I can go in and let's have a look at that image I was playing around with earlier. I'll place that. Okay, it's quite big, this image, so I'm going to have to go and do a bit of work on it. So then I can then resize the image. Okay, to fit within one of my squares or the. Okay, so I can start to now. Okay, so there we go. So I'm now starting to place the images into the grid on a new layer. So that split to grid system allows you to add columns and create page layout. So there's a few ideas about using grids and systems to help you lay out your work.